Hi everyone, welcome to the another episode of the Remote Podcast. I'm your host Pushpak, and today we have with us Bhagyasree Pancholy. So Bhagyasree is a founder of All Remotely. She's a lawyer and operations expert with a turned SaaS marketer with 8+ years of experience working remotely. Welcome to the show, Bhagyasree. How are you?
Thank you, Pushpak. All well. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm great.
That's lovely to hear. And this is such an apt time that you have come up with this topic of remote work. The world has got a taste of it, but I think there are a lot of challenges that we all need to learn about and navigate. So I think you've come up with this podcast at the very right time.
Yeah. So tell us about All Remotely, like what exactly it is, since when you started it, and what problem you're solving.
So when I started all remotely, it was actually the first remote work consultancy focused for India and for cultural and multi-diverse teams. Um, I was working with a couple of corporates and startups who were looking to either set up remote teams or
Hmm.
transition from an office-based team to remote teams. But it so happened that last month we were acquired and we have now pivoted. So my new founder, Dennis, and I are now solely focused on previously co-located office-based teams, helping them transition to remote in a more compliant and a productive manner.
Okay, so means
This
what
is what
exactly do you like train them, or like what exactly you do?
so the new version, I this is what I would like to say, of all remotely basically has this package where we have certain elements in the package like a psychometric test, we have legal compliance, we have payroll compliance, we have HR tech, we have
Mm-hmm.
ergonomics. So we brought in all these elements together, and this is essentially one side of remote work that many people are not aware of or they are not talking about, because remote work is more than just working from anywhere or working from home. It has to be done in the right way. It has to be done in a more sustainable way. So we help teams become remote in a more productive, efficient, and I would say sustainable way.
Yeah, since when you started this?
I started all remotely last year. So
Okay.
there's an interesting story behind it. So I've been a remote worker since 2012,
Mm-hmm.
and in 2019 I took a sabbatical for my personal reasons, and then I was looking to get back into the workforce, and that's when I started looking for remote jobs in India, and I couldn't find many. Um, More so, what was interesting to see was that a lot of people didn't even know what remote work was, so they were actually confusing it with work from home.
Yeah.
And this is when I thought that, I need to leverage my expertise and experience of working remotely with international teams for last 7 years, and now actually want to teach Indians what remote work is all about. And it is much more than working from home.
Yeah, like I was thinking, like you said, you started working remotely from 8 years back, right? So, like in today, also in India, people don't know more, like a lot about remote work. But so, like since that time, how did you start it? How did you came up with this idea of working remotely?
It was actually by accident, Pushpak. So I was a lawyer. I was working with the bank,
Mm-hmm.
and my husband, who was in the army, so we were getting posted out of Bangalore to
Mm-hmm.
Arunachal Pradesh, and we were newly married. So I didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to, be there in Bangalore and
Yeah,
let
yeah,
him
yeah.
go all by
Right.
myself. I wanted to tag along, and I
Yeah.
started looking for different options.
Mm-hmm.
I actually searched on the internet a lot, and that's when some of the people that I knew in the tech industry told me that there are certain companies that would allow you to work from home, and they are generally tech companies or
Right.
SaaS companies. So you need to have some sort of experience in it, and I didn't have any because I was a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started interning with my cousin brother's company
Right.
as a content writer, and I used to draft contracts for them, employment contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly, with some of his clients, they took me on board, and then they taught me about tech and SaaS and marketing and business development. That's how I kind of pivoted in marketing.
Mm-hmm.
But I always maintained my legal profession, in the sense that I was still drafting a lot of employment contracts for international teams. That is
Right.
how I started.
So what were your initial days basically? Because when since I started remotely, I came back to my hometown. The environment is really different. I don't have colleagues with us, so it's kind of like, it's like we feel lonely. It's kind of depressing. It's like it's very hard to come up with motivation to work, right? So it was very difficult for me in the early days, but now I'm used to, like, I can do it. But so how was it for you? Like, how did you get this motivation of working remotely?
It was exactly the same for me, Pushpak, because just imagine I was working with an investment bank. So I was very much used to the corporate culture, the office culture. And then all of a sudden, I had no boss, I had no colleagues, I had no
Yeah.
office. And also, more so because from Bangalore, we moved to Tawang. That's a very small hill station in Arunachal where there was no social life altogether. It
Mm-hmm.
was very, very hard. It was very challenging, but I had some really good mentors in my first job who actually helped me overcome those challenges in terms of anxiety, in terms of stress, because it could be very stressful when you don't know
Right.
how to demarcate your professional and personal lives. It's quite common that as an amateur remote worker, you tend to increase or spill your office hours into the work hours, and then you have very less resting time that actually takes a toll in the longer run. So I had amazing people. I had some coaches also in the company gave me the stipend to reach out to these, lifestyle coaches who taught
Mm-hmm.
me how to do that. So yeah, it took around 6 months, but then I got the hang of it, and ever since then, it has never been a problem.
Is there any advice that you would like to give to someone who started working remotely?
Oh yes, definitely. One is to have a routine, and I know how cliche this sounds because this is written all over the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But as cliche as it is, having a routine is absolutely important. And I have been guilty of this when I started. So for me, it was like, you just get out of your bed, still in your night suit.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you've brushed, maybe you haven't, maybe you've taken a bath, maybe you haven't, and you
Yeah.
start working. That is actually a very wrong thing to do. So
Mm-hmm.
just pretend that like you're going to the office, you get up, you have your breakfast, you take a bath, you change, and then start working. Why this is important is not only because it would set a routine for yourself and would still continue with your biological clock, but also when you actually take a bath and when you have had breakfast and all, you actually can think better. So
Right.
if something that you are doing in, let's say, 3 hours, with a fresh mind, you may complete it in 1 hour.
Yeah.
So I think one thing is have a routine and learn when to say no. What happens is, like, when you especially working with global teams, it so
Mm-hmm.
happens that somebody's pinking you even in your off hours and your
Right.
whatever communication tools you use. So
Mm-hmm.
it could be a bit overwhelming, or maybe if you're new on the job, you may want to impress your boss. So you keep replying, but that's wrong. Learn to say no, learn to demarcate your professional and personal hours. That was
Right. Right.
actually the key.
It's a really amazing point. Yeah. God, and what kind of perks do you get, like, as a remote worker?
Now, because I am the owner of my own company,
Mm-hmm.
um, I am still to draw a salary. We are reaching to the point of profitability now, but in my previous jobs, when I was working as a contractor, I had no perks, but for one company, I worked as an employee. I had the regular perks, like I had health, medical allowances, I had childcare allowances, I had pet leaves,
Mm-hmm.
I had unlimited vacations. I went on two annual retreats, one to Greece and other one to Iceland with
While
that
working.
company. Yeah, it was an annual team retreat, so the
Yeah.
company paid for all of our visas and traveling expenses and food and boarding. So I had those perks when I was working as an employee.
So basically, you were working and you were traveling at the same time, right?
The company used to take us because it was the annual team retreat where the
Mm-hmm.
company, everybody in the company would come together and work together for like 15 days, twice in a year, which is actually very important to maintain the social balance in the
Right.
remote
Right.
team. And also, it's actually important because when you meet a person, when you work with them, you understand that person better. So even if,
Exactly.
after 15 days you are working on other side of the globe, you still know how that person thinks, you still know that person
Right,
on a
right.
personal level.
Exactly. So,
So
like
yeah,
yeah, people think remote work is like work from home, but that's not true, right? Remote, like we are in the middle of pandemic, that's why remote work is like work from home, but that's not real, right?
yeah,
So
yes,
remote work is like basically you can travel anywhere, you can go anywhere, and you can work from anywhere basically. Like it's kind of a freedom, not really, but yeah,
yes,
kind of. So what do you think
yes.
about that? Why people?
Actually, the concept of remote work and work from home is so new that even some of the people who have been in this industry are still, um, learning more about it. There has never been a clear-cut definition between the two, but it has been derived over and over from people and their experiences. And what you said has actually come to become the definition that remote work is working from anywhere. It could be your home, it could be a beach, it could be train, it could be wherever. And
Yeah.
work from home is essentially working from home. Again, the distinction I would add to this is, if you're working with international teams, you are working remotely because there's no office. There's never
Yeah.
an office. You may meet your coworker, let's say 15, 20 days in a year, but that's all
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Right.
But work from home is more or less for teams who were co-located and are
Mm-hmm.
currently working from home, and those companies also that who may go back to being co-located. So like you said, because of pandemic, everybody is working from home. But if this pandemic was to get over, which I so hope that next year it does,
Yeah.
those people may have to go back to the office. So for them, it would be work from home.
Right. Uh, so we discussed about there are lots of advantages of working remotely, but I heard that some people are actually working more because of the remote work. Like their employers tell them ki, like you are at the home only, then why don't you just complete your task today only? Just give it to us more. Like this kind of stuff is also happening. So what do you think about
Yeah,
that?
this is actually the reason why these companies or these employees of these companies right now are in a stressful situation. They are suffering from mental disorders, they are suffering from stress, they are suffering from burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not being productive, so indirectly, despite the manager pushing them to work more in a day, they're actually losing out on revenue. The projects are delayed, and in some cases the employees are suing their employers because this
Right.
is actually unethical.
Mm-hmm.
This is very interesting you brought up, because I read this report sometime around June that India has become the largest country where these employee monitoring and tracking softwares are being
Yeah.
used, and
Yeah.
this is a very dangerous thing to use, not only because it would hit your team morale and team productivity very badly, but these softwares are illegal to use until and
Oh.
unless, yes, until unless you have drafted into the employment contracts that you've given to your employees,
Mm-hmm.
saying that they would be monitored and they would be tracked, and these whatever reports are generated from these softwares would be used to review their performance. One, two, these softwares are breaching on the fundamental right of privacy of employees. So
Right.
they're tracking you. They are, they click your screen, they click you, they take screenshots at random hours. You don't know
Damn.
how the data is stored. You don't know how the data is used. You don't know anything.
Oh,
And if you read,
that's
yeah,
scary. Yeah.
that's very scary. And if you read the policies of these softwares, time tracking,
Mm-hmm.
they're not GDPR compliant, they're not HIPAA compliant, and it is mandatory in India to have HIPAA compliance if you have to use any software that relates to employee productivity.
Okay.
So it's, there's a lot of it. It's not, such things are not only wrong on a moral level, but they're actually wrong on legal level also.
But still, people are doing it, right?
Because people don't know, Pushpak. That's the thing, everything is so new to us that we
Mm-hmm.
don't know what our rights are, we don't know what our responsibilities are, we don't know how to do it. Initially, this pandemic and entire work from home was tagged as the biggest experiment of work from home. But this experiment has actually gone more wrong than right in terms of remote work and work from home, because this is not remote work. This is a sudden response to a pandemic.
Right.
Remote work is a more strategic, sustainable approach that the companies take after taking into account all sorts of factors: employees, processes, policies, business growth, revenue, everything. Nothing was, and they also train their employees to work from home, be it using softwares, be it
Mm-hmm.
using how to work productively, or having the right set of equipment and infrastructure on social levels. Nobody was trained. We just went into a lockdown all of a sudden. So definitely this is how people are trying to control and micromanage their teams, and it is actually going wrong than right at this point.
Like suppose suppose there's this company and they're tracking an employee, so and the employees don't know like this is illegal and all, so can they sue a company if they know this is like wrong or something?
I definitely recommend them suing,
They should listen to this
because
podcast.
yes, because you don't know how your data is stored. And it's this is one thing, that you have your name leaked out and your phone number leaked out. We've all received those
Right.
SMSs, on our phone. But it is altogether different when your photo is leaked out.
Yeah.
You can be morphed
Right. Right.
on all, and especially if you're a woman, you are particularly vulnerable.
True.
So all this, and none of the companies are telling employees how their data is being used, apart from the fact on productivity and performance, that whether you were working or you were not working. And come to think of it, Pushpa, just imagine, like you and I both have worked in offices. We worked
Mm-hmm.
8 hours. Nobody questions us if we take 15 minutes of tea break in an office. Nobody questions if we just turn our head around and start speaking to our colleague for 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody questions us if we go out for a walk to a different department for 10 minutes. But when you're using these softwares, even if you have to go take a toilet break, you may have to pause it. And that little breaks that you take, which are mandatory because the law says that 20 minutes of screen time should be accompanied with 10 minutes of off screen times.
Oh.
But if you take 10 minutes every hour, you actually stretch your working hours by 2 hours. So instead of 8, you're working 10 hours because there's a software that's tracking you.
Yeah. So you talking about the laws. So what kind of what all are laws out there? Like, could you tell more about these laws? Because like I have no idea about it. Like a lot of people don't know about these remote work laws, right?
Yeah. So I would start with one major law that a lot of remote companies, and these remote companies are some of the very famous remote companies that you and I both know of, they're doing is misclassifying their employees.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do is they take you as an independent contractor, they treat you as an employee, but they don't give you the benefits of an employee. And that's
Okay.
misclassification, that's illegal, that's non complying with laws, not only national laws, but international labor organization guidelines as well.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of companies are doing it. People are, and a lot of employees are happy or contractors are happy, because what is happening is that when you work for a global remote team, the salary is actually the biggest attraction. You
Mm-hmm.
get you Generally you get paid in dollars, which by sheer conversion is actually a lot of rupees,
Right.
at least 10% above the market rate here in India. So that's
Mm-hmm.
the biggest attraction people have. Some of these companies then again offer some hardware or these annual trip retreats, which are like cherry on the cake for
Yeah.
people,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not understanding the long term effects of it. And it is only now that people have started questioning. So I had this case of an engineer from Hyderabad. He was working for 10 years with a remote company, and he caught the virus.
Okay.
And the bill ran into, like, 25-30 lakhs, because he got admitted into a private hospital. When he sent the bill back to the company that he was working for some sort of partial reimbursement, it was only then he comes to know that he's not covered by their medical plans. He's a
Damn.
contractor. He's not an employee. But for 10 years, he was treated as an employee. And there's actually guidelines how you can distinguish if you are an employee or you are a contractor. So let's say if you receive performance reviews by
Mm-hmm.
the company that's employing you, or the company that you're working for, that's the way I want to use the term I want to use. If they are giving you hardware, if they're taking you out for trips, if they are paying for your traveling expenses, uh, if uh, if you're getting promoted in that company on the basis of your performance,
Mm-hmm.
there are it's called the ABC test. It was given by the Californian Supreme Court, but it has now been widely and internationally accepted there, even in India. Some
Mm-hmm.
in some of the cases, the courts relied on ABC test and gave the judgment based on that test. So if you meet all these three primary criteria, there are of course secondary criteria also, but these are the primary ones. And if you just take all three of them, you're not a contractor, you are an employee, and the company is bound to pay you the medical benefits, the health benefits, the child care benefits, whatever other benefits that the country that you are a citizen of demands the employer
Mm-hmm.
to pay to the employee. So this is one thing that most Indians don't know.
Yeah.
And when I ask a lot of people, they really don't care, because they say, for our insurance, we earn so much more that we can have our own insurance. That's good. But
Yeah.
what if tomorrow you run into a legal trouble, or you run into a trouble with the income tax department?
Right.
Then what? And you know how problematic it could be. That's one law that I really want people to know. The second one I already told you is about this use of such softwares, employee monitoring
Mm-hmm.
and tracking software. The third and the biggest, another one of the biggest laws that a lot of people are not doing is the taxation.
Mm-hmm.
There are people across the globe who are just evading taxes by using third party payment platforms. Or there are companies who are also hand in glove with those employees slash contractors, because even they don't want to pay taxes.
Right.
So both of them are actually guilty of evading taxes. And now, because remote work has come into the limelight globally, and now governments are tracking it, there have been crackdowns in this. So companies have been penalized heavily, especially in the
Mm-hmm.
US and European Union. Employees slash contractors have been penalized heavily. So don't evade your taxes. If you are earning, be very open about it. Pay your taxes, and pay
Right.
your taxes where they are due. So if you are an Indian living in Greece, and you say, hey, I'm living in Greece, I'm not supposed to pay, but you are supposed to pay in India. So
Yeah.
pay your taxes. So these are the three main laws that I want people to understand. Of course, there are so many more, but
Mm-hmm.
these are the three main.
Right. Amazing. Like these are like I had no idea about these laws. Like most of the people don't know, I guess.
I know, and this is what I've been doing for the last 8 years.
And people should know about it. So what kind of challenge, did you face by working remotely? I think we talked about it, but yeah, still.
So number one was basically sort of an isolation,
Yeah.
you know, that bond that I used to have with my colleagues in the office, that social
Mm-hmm.
bond. And what happens is, like, in India, what we do is that sometimes our work friends become our best friends.
Right.
So that thing was missing for me hugely. And the second, it
Mm-hmm.
also took me some time to understand um, the company. So, generally remote companies are very decentralized, as opposed to corporate companies where everything is so centralized and you have no
Mm-hmm.
authority or less authority whatsoever. But there, you are on your own, you have complete authority, autonomy, everything's decentralized. You're treated 1,000 times better than what you were used to.
Right.
So this could be a bit overwhelming,
Mm-hmm.
and just because it's something new and something good that is happening to you, you may just end up working more. So these
Mm-hmm.
two were my biggest challenges, and it actually led to some sort of stress. And that's when my boss slash my mentor, she was like, no, 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 this is not, this is how you should be treated. It's not that we're doing something special treating you so good.
Mm-hmm.
So take a break, just learn to say no and take a break. So they pushed me to take 15 days off because I had not taken any day off in 3 months. So they gave me 15 days off just to relax. So yeah, it was one of my biggest challenge, that overwhelming part.
Right. So, do you think like we can be more productive from home? Like, were you more productive while working from home or from office?
Definitely from home, because again, there are two types of remote companies. One are these flexible remote companies that I've always worked with, and then
Mm-hmm.
there are other remote companies that may ask you to log in at a particular time and log out at a particular time. They're not so flexible. If you work with these flexible companies, they let you set your own schedule.
Right.
For them, what matters is if you've met your metrics, if you've met your
Right.
KPIs. It doesn't matter to them whether you meet them in 8 hours a day, whether you just work 3 hours a day endlessly and you meet your metrics. So because everything was free for me to, do, everything was, I was free actually. I was given the upper hand to set my own schedule and how I wanted to work and how much I wanted to work. I never thought of cheating the system.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I was not cheating the system, I was working when it was the most convenient to me. I was more productive.
Yeah, that's the good thing. Like some people are productive in the morning, some are in the night,
Yeah, absolutely.
so we can choose our time.
So, exactly. So,
Yeah.
especially for women, once their children are asleep or,
Yeah.
the
Right.
food has been prepared and all, they have the time. So, why not use that time to work if you feel like?
Mm-hmm. Right. What has been your best and worst experience of working remotely? One of the best experience and one of the worst experience.
The best is that in the last 8 years, I have actually lived with my husband in almost all corners of the
Mm-hmm.
country. I have met some amazing people. Um, in India, the teams that I've worked with have been some of the most progressive teams that have used the latest technologies. I realized long time ago that I was actually working in places and with technologies that were at least 5 years ahead of Indians. I used
Mm-hmm.
Salesforce in I think 2015 or something, when it was still something very new.
Yeah.
So, I work with such progressive teams, and knowing people from different continents, from different countries, their cultures, has always fascinated me. And when I work with these teams, I got to meet them. So that was like my best part, or about working remotely.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most challenging one was, I can't think of any. So just imagine how much I love remote working. But
Yeah.
I think the isolation factor, I would say, has been challenging initially, but now I'm pretty used to it.
Yeah.
But I think that could be a challenge for anybody. Even the most experienced of the remote workers can
Right.
find it challenging.
Right. So, do you still practice law and like you came from a law and like became a marketer? So, like, how do you manage both these things? Do you still practice law or like?
I do. I've always practiced law. Not I was never into litigation,
Mm-hmm.
but when I started working, like I said, I was drafting contracts, and it so happened that as I progressed in my remote work journey, I switched from basic drafting on Indian contracts to something more on the international employment side.
Mm-hmm.
And I was one of the very few lawyers who started doing it so early. Even today, most of these lawyers are struggling with international employment laws. And now, because remote work, there has been a new area that has come up,
Right.
where the employment policies and contracts have to be drafted keeping in mind this trend of working from home or remote work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting a lot of traction because I understand law, I understand international law, and I understand remote work so well. So I always practice law, I never gave it up. But how I switched to marketing was because law has always been one industry that you can't work remotely from. So
Yeah.
while I had those gigs of drafting contracts, they weren't regular. So and I have always found advertisements and marketing to be very fascinating because I love to speak. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. So I started, I started as a content writer because I knew writing, because
Mm-hmm.
I was drafting contracts, so it was easier for me. Then I
Yeah.
learned SEO, then I learned content marketing. From there, I switched to hardcore SaaS B2B marketing. Of course, I did my MBA in between, and I had a lot of mentorship. My bosses have been very, very, very supportive. They taught me a lot. But ultimately, it comes down to the fact, how much do you want to learn? A lot of people don't want to learn. How
Mm.
much do you want to upskill? I always wanted to do that. I still want to
Yeah.
do that. So now at All Remotely, we've brought this package all together, which nobody else has on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
We're the only ones who are thinking about it, because my partner and I have seen the challenge of these companies. It's not, the challenge is not revolving around the right kind of remote hiring or onboarding or culture that everybody's talking about. The problem is actually deep down. If you are hiring the right kind of personality to work from home, if they have the right mental state to work from home, if they have the necessary infrastructure and the
Mm-hmm.
conducive home environment to work from home, if they have the right furniture to work from home. So these are the actually the deep pain points that we are addressing. So again, I'm learning in all this process. So I think the journey has to be more towards learning in remote
Right.
work rather than just stopping and asking for people to pay you more for what you have learned.
Exactly. So recently I came across with one article. I think it was from McKinsey or something. So it shows that if you have a diverse team, so you can come up with the better products, or you can be more productive, like grow your revenue. Like, what do you think about that? Do you think diverse team matters?
Yes, and this is actually diversity is actually a very Western concept, because if you think about an Indian team, you have somebody from Maharashtra, you have somebody from Rajasthan, you have somebody from Bangalore.
Yeah.
Okay, you have a Hindu, you have a Muslim, you have a lady, you have a Sikh. We are diverse by nature, so our teams are diverse. This is not something that Indians per se have to think about, but
Mm-hmm.
this is more of a Western concept where
Okay.
their environment or their population is more or less homogeneous.
Right.
For us, it is we have this saying we've learned right from our
Yeah, we are a
childhood.
diverse country. Yeah.
Yeah, unity in diversity. So it's not for us, but diversity, for a lot of companies, they actually think diversity is in terms of gender diversity, race or ethnicity. But diversity is actually more than that. Diversity includes age diversity.
Right.
It includes thought diversity. And why I stress on age so much is because, see, you and I are young. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
we can work hard, but
Right.
as opposed to, let's say, our parents who are in
Mm-hmm.
60s, they have the experience.
Right.
Even if they can't do physical or mental labor, they know how things can get done, they know how things should be done, they know the challenges, they know their
Right. Right.
solutions.
Yeah.
So age diversity is a very important factor that remote teams should think about, because there are innumerable challenges that young people in the team may not be aware of. But those people
Mm-hmm.
who have already worked for so many years, they know it. And
Right.
when it comes to thought diversities, this is very interesting, because when you read these remote job descriptions, they always say we are looking for somebody organized, this that fits into our culture, fits into.
Yeah.
You don't want somebody that fits or is a mirror image of you. You want
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's different than you, because your customers are different than you. So if you have somebody on the team that thinks differently than you, then you have more solutions, more opinions, more challenges. And this is
Right.
how your customers think.
Right.
So indirectly, with that different person, with that thought diversity on your team, you are actually kind of replicating more real life situations where people can think in a number of ways, and you have the solutions already.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, diverse teams are more productive.
Yeah. And we are already diverse, so that's not for matlab, a challenge for us.
Yeah, it's not a major challenge for Indian
Yeah.
teams. No, not at all. We're pretty diverse. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
for us the challenge would be to have some sort of homogeneous
Actually,
homogeneous
like seriously.
structure. Yeah, That could be a
That is a
challenge for
challenge.
us.
Yeah, that is. We want, like, we are used to like having like people from different background, and now there are same people, and we are like, yo, like we want something new.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know.
exactly.
So, what is your advice? Like, what advice would you give to a first-time remote worker, and how to survive remote work and how to excel in it?
Hmm. My advice to the first time remote worker would be learn. Not only about your role or your skills or your experience, but learn how this remote team functions. That's very important
Right.
because in remote team you are so well weaved into the system or the management or how the process is or the operation side that sometimes it is actually more important to learn how the team is functioning than just knowing more about your role or what you're supposed to do.
Mhm.
So continuously keep learning how the company is running, what is happening, how the processes are, and upskill yourself. That's again one thing because especially in this tech industry, the technology is changing so rapidly.
Yeah.
Remember when people thought PHP was like God, and then came Node, and
Yeah.
now JavaScript is God, and now you never know what's,
Right. Right.
and now AI
React is
and ML
there.
is God.
Yeah.
Yeah. So keep upskilling, keep learning. How to thrive in a remote environment is actually I'll share this. Generally a lot of people don't talk about it, but I want people to understand. A lot of remote companies say that we are an open culture.
Hmm.
You can speak to us about anything. Don't take it very literally.
Okay.
Keep certain things to yourself, even if it's
Oh,
a negative
right.
review, or if
Hmm.
you've experienced some kind of burnout or stress or something. Just don't go about talking about it because they mentioned in the interview that they are a very open team. Even if they are, you don't know how the individual is, how
Right.
the other individual would take it. So that could actually turn into a negative factor for you. So
Yeah.
learn to keep things to yourself.
This is the important point.
Yeah, I've fallen prey to it. So now I don't. I just don't share everything. It's good to share what you need to share, but
Hmm.
don't open up too much on your personal front.
Yeah, like suppose you have joined a new company and you haven't even met those people in real. So you like it's hard to open up also, and you should. I think it's not a good idea to open up. You don't know really that person. Like there should be
Yeah,
boundaries, I guess, right?
exactly. Yeah. So if you want to open up about your professional life, that is okay. I mean, just judge the person really well enough first, but definitely keep your personal problems to yourself until and unless it is absolutely necessary to
Yeah,
tell them
right.
because you not feeling well and then you need to take
Mm-hmm.
off. So that's
Yeah,
okay. But I mean, you can't go to them and say you have boyfriend or girlfriend troubles.
yeah. So
So yeah, that's
what are
my
the
advice.
some like what are some easiest way, or like what are the ways to upskill ourselves?
One of the things that I did was while I was working in the marketing role, I was very intrigued with business development because all these sales, business development, marketing, they
Mm-hmm.
work very closely. Sometimes they are overlapping. And what I did was, I wanted to learn more about it. So I used to volunteer if there were opportunities for me
Okay.
to volunteer or work part time with another department. I would always volunteer. I
Mm-hmm.
actually also did it with the tech department because I soon realized that I can't be very good at what I do until unless I understand the basics of development and programming. So I
Right.
didn't know what JavaScript was. I still don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I can't read the code, but I know what JavaScript is. I know what full stack backend and front end is,
Right. Right.
although it's not even related to what I do. But you need to know. So the thing is that, always, if you want to upskill yourself, first try to learn what your company is doing rather than just going on Udemy or Coursera or any other
Mm-hmm.
educational platforms to upskill. Understand what the company is doing because that's very important. And when
Right.
you upskill yourself, just don't keep upskilling yourself in your own department or role or expertise. Cross upskilling is kind of beneficial because now there is no isolated role. Like marketing is not only marketing touches upon growth,
Yeah.
content,
Right.
sales, business So they're like, a lot of amalgamation of roles now. So cross upskilling is very important, and feel free to do it. One of the other ways is have your own pet projects. I learned SEO on my own. I knew
Mm-hmm.
about organic on-site SEO, but I did not technical SEO. So I created a blog for myself. I used to watch YouTube videos. I used to play around with technical SEO on my blog, and I learned it.
Yeah,
So if you want to learn something, make your own project, start doing. You'll learn. Practice makes a man perfect.
right. Like suppose I think if you're in a marketing and if you just start writing, like I don't know, if you just start writing a journal and then a little Facebook or LinkedIn post, I think writing is very important. Like if you're into marketing, because that's how you reach out to people, writing or making videos. I guess these are the skills which might be important.
Definitely, definitely. Digital marketing and growth marketing and content marketing, of course, are some of the biggest aspects of marketing in SaaS companies, and especially in remote companies, because nobody goes and does field marketing. But I think the basics of field marketing and understanding your customer, client, or prospective client is equally important.
Yeah,
So always start writing with the target audience in mind, even if it's something that you've just made up in your mind. But once you
right.
start focusing on a targeted audience, you can actually draft better content that actually gets a lot of conversions. So just not plain writing. I mean, if you just start writing a story or a poem and think that you'll become a marketing, chances are very less.
Yeah.
But if you write very specific targeted content, the chances
Mm-hmm.
are more.
Right. So why did you choose the the marketing in SaaS only? Like, do you think this industry is growing? And of course, I have noticed that like there was an article that in India the SaaS market is growing a lot, like and globally as well. So what's the reason for you to join in SaaS marketing?
I actually don't know about it until right now that you said that it's actually
Yeah.
growing. But the thing was, when I started working and I started looking for remote jobs, it was only SaaS companies that were into remote,
Mm-hmm.
teams. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a lot of e-commerce. We definitely not manufacturing or fashion. So
Mm-hmm.
SaaS was the only thing, and SaaS was progressing like anything. These companies were progressing like anything. So I wanted to be, working with one of these very progressive teams. That's why SaaS. And then it so stuck around with me that I started learning so much about fintech, marktech, edtech, whatever tech you
Mm-hmm.
want to add, that it became an industry in itself. And I never thought of going out of it. I mean, I would love to get into fashion, but I don't think now I have a chance, or I want to now,
Mm-hmm.
because that's altogether a different ball game. And then e-commerce came up.
Right.
Um, I'm still not very sure about my choices about e-commerce, but yeah. So SaaS, I started because those were the only companies that were remote back then,
Right. Right.
and still a lot of these remote companies are actually SaaS companies.
Yeah. True. So what are you really into outside of work? What do you do? How do you spend your time?
I have a dog, I have a daughter, so they pretty much take up a lot of my time. But I exercise a lot. I used to play a lot of badminton. I used to swim a lot. I'm a very active outdoors person.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something very important for me because, initially when I started working remotely and I was using computer and screen so much, I started getting headache. And,
Mm-hmm.
I tried a lot of stuff. Somebody recommended glasses. I got glasses. Somebody recommended meditation. I did everything. But what calmed me down was that, taking these small breaks and just going out in the nature. That
Right.
actually relieved me a lot. So now it has so become that, once I'm done working, I actually just go out for an hour. I don't come back. I don't use my phone for an hour. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to I try to get rid of screen, any kind of screen, and just sit with nature and relax. So yeah, I think pretty much outside of work, I do these activities, sports and exercise. I often read, like
Mm-hmm.
the book, not from Kindle, but from a book. I like it, I enjoy it, so I read quite often. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Like when you start, this happened with me also. Like you're just sitting on your laptop and you're working, and then you start something else doing, and you just like the whole day goes, and you are still there. So it is really important to get out of there.
Yeah, and what people do is like, okay, so we logged out from work, they'll open their Facebook, they'll
Hmm.
open their LinkedIn,
Exactly.
they'll open their YouTube.
Right.
Get off. Acha, once they're done with laptop, they'll go watch TV. Get off
Yeah.
screen,
Yeah. That is very
because
important.
any kind of blue light is harmful. So just get off screen, just go out for a walk, I think, or else go talk to your family
Hmm.
members or
Yeah.
friends. That's the best thing you can do.
What are your top three favorite tools of remote work?
Hmm. Definitely Google Meet.
Yeah.
I love to speak with people with video on, because that's kind of personalized talking, kind of
Hmm.
replicates real life talking. Um, Apart from that, this is very it's difficult because I have so many, and
Yeah. There are a
some
lot
some
of.
of some of these are very basic. But Calendly definitely is something that I swear by, because I have a lot of these meetings and I don't want
Hmm.
to mess up Calendly or Google Calendar
Right. Right.
for reminders. Of late, I've been introduced with couple of very cool remote tools. One of them was Peoplebox.
Pardon?
Then there was
People.
Peoplebox.
Okay. What exactly it
Peoplebox.
is?
So Peoplebox is actually a tool that does project management, product management, some sort of, it touches upon social communication as well. So they
Hmm.
have this features, and this is what I really, really liked, is that they would that bot would randomly introduce you to a new coworker every week,
Oh,
and
nice.
set you up for a virtual coffee chat. So you get to know your coworkers really well. So
Yeah.
Peoplebox was one tool that I really liked. Then 2 days ago I was introduced to Reslash, and
Hmm.
Reslash is again another tool that I really like, because what is happening is that we're using a lot of these boxed communication tools like Zoom and Google. Reslash is trying to replicate Office Floor, so it's like spatial communication.
Hmm.
So like you can just go pop into another bubble, just
Yeah.
say
Yeah. Yeah.
hi, just office, like you would pop into somebody's cubicle, just say hi,
Oh.
whatever, come out. And then some of these virtual offices, because the solution to these time tracking and employee monitoring softwares is actually these virtual offices where you can actually
Right.
see. So there are a lot of virtual offices that I really like using.
No, this sounds interesting. There's both of these two tools, really.
Yeah, you should definitely check out Pushpak.
Yeah.
I think you and your team would love it.
Yeah. Sure. So, are you following anyone like for the remote work? Are you taking advice from any person about the remote work, like any influencer or leader? Do you follow some people?
Not really, because I'm like kind of a veteran myself,
Yeah, actually, because I got a lot
but
of insight from you about remote work. So I think people should follow you for that.
I mean, this is not being modest, but if I were to say, if people were to follow somebody genuine, I would say Matt Mullenberg, the creator of WordPress, because he was one of the first people who
Hmm.
Automatic was one of the first companies to go remote. So if an Automatic has been remote for so many years, so I think Matt really knows what he's doing, and he's a phenomenal person when it comes to remote work. He knows. Um, who else? Who else? Who else? I think I would just say Matt, because Automatic has been one of the pioneers. The Everybody else has sort of followed Automatic. But I think Dennis, my partner, he's been remote for 20 years.
Oh,
So he's actually the veteran. I think he turned remote when IBM started working from home back in 80s.
okay.
So Dennis is one person who really knows remote work in and out, and has actually seen the revolution and the changes in the industry for 20 years.
Hmm.
Apart from that, the one company that I really admire as a remote company is Doist. So anybody who follows Doist is good to go.
Cool. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Mm, Not right now, but I think, I really want a lot of Indian women
Hmm.
and people with disabilities to join the remote workforce because, maybe, one of my next ventures would be more targeted towards women and people with disabilities because um, my father was a disabled person. He was actually a war disabled officer, and I
Mm-hmm.
had seen him struggle. So disability is something, one, if it is visible, people have some sort of sympathy for you. But if it's not visible, if it's an internal injury,
Mm-hmm.
people have no sympathy with you. They don't think that you are disabled because they can't see one
Mm-hmm.
hand missing or one leg missing.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of people in India who have disability which is not visible and they're struggling.
Yeah.
I really want um, to help those people get into remote jobs, get meaningful employment, and
Mm-hmm.
also women, because a lot of us have to take step back from our careers once we are married or we have children, and
True.
nobody should, because we also have been educated equally.
Exactly.
So remote work is the solution for women and for people with disabilities.
Amazing. All the best for your venture. I hope that you will launch it as soon as possible and it will be a huge success.
Thank you, Pushpak. I'll keep you in the loop once we
Yeah,
launch it.
sure. Thank you
It's
so
due in
much.
January.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this at Kuwa. Like I got really amazing insight. I never thought like it like these are the things are there this much of laws and all this stuff. So yeah, it was amazing talking to you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.